When I think about how I started learning English, I don't think of textbooks or classrooms. I think of a summer evening, sitting cross-legged on my bedroom floor, watching a movie with subtitles. It was The Devil Wears Prada. I didn't understand most of the dialogue at the time, but I remember how the characters spoke. So fast, so confidently, so smoothly. I stared at the screen in wonder, reading every subtitle like it was magic. English, to me then, wasn't just a language. It was a soundtrack to a life I wanted to live. That was the beginning. Not with grammar, not with memorization, with a feeling. I didn't fall in love with English because I had to learn it. I fell in love because it made me feel alive. You see, I grew up in a place where English was not spoken often. It was something people studied in school, maybe for a job or a test. It was treated like a tool, but for me it was something more. I didn't want to pass an exam. I wanted to understand people, to feel what they were feeling when they spoke, sang, or laughed. In English, I didn't want to study the language. I wanted to live inside it. At first, I did something very simple. I started listening. Every single day, I found English songs on YouTube. I listened to Adele, Ed Sheeran, Taylor Swift, songs that told stories. I didn't understand every word, but I could feel the emotion in their voices. I played the same songs again and again. I started to memorize the sounds. I'd whisper lyrics to myself like little secrets. Hello from the other side. I didn't know exactly what she meant at first, but I felt it, and that was enough to keep me going. Then I moved on to movies. I watched Harry Potter, Forrest Gump, Titanic, classic films with English dialogue and subtitles in my native language. I followed the characters with my eyes, listened carefully to how they said things. I noticed the rhythm of the speech, the tone of their voices, the expressions on their faces when they spoke. Every scene became a lesson, not in grammar, but in feeling. That was my secret. I was learning without realizing it, and it felt like falling in love, slow, surprising, and deep. And then something beautiful started to happen. My ears changed. I began to hear patterns. Words that once felt like noise now started to stand out. Phrases like, I don't know, are you serious? Or, that's amazing, popped up again and again. My brain started recognizing them, like old friends. I didn't need to look them up anymore. I just knew them. This part of the journey didn't involve any notebooks, no flashcards, no pressure, just curiosity. I was like a child again, learning through play, through story, through sound. I would pause movies, repeat lines out loud, copy the way the actors moved their lips. It felt silly sometimes, but also exciting. I wasn't just watching English. I was becoming a part of it. I also began following English-speaking YouTubers. Not the big fancy ones with professional setups, but everyday people. People sharing their morning routines, doing makeup tutorials, giving relationship advice, showing how they cooked dinner. It was like opening a window into another world. And I noticed how different it was from what we were taught in school. In class, we learned, how do you do? But on YouTube, people said, hey, what's up? Or, how's it going? In school, we wrote, I am going to the market. But online, people said, I'm heading to the store. The English I fell in love with wasn't stiff or formal. It was real. And that changed everything. I stopped thinking of English as a subject. I started seeing it as a culture, a personality, a living thing. It wasn't about perfect sentences. It was about connection. I wanted to know more. I started noticing signs in English when I walked through the city, on billboards, restaurant menus, shop names. Suddenly, I was surrounded by the language. It was always there, but now I could see it. I remember one day I was riding the bus, and I saw a poster that said, "Believe in yourself." It was such a simple phrase. But that day, it hit me hard. I repeated it to myself over and over. Believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. That's when I knew. English wasn't just something to understand. It was something I could use to lift myself up, to change how I thought, even how I lived. So I made a choice. I wasn't going to wait until I was ready to learn English. I was going to fall deeper in love with it. Every single day. I started changing small things around me. My phone? I switched it to English. At first it was confusing, sure. But little by little the words made sense. Settings, notifications, airplane mode. They weren't scary anymore. They were normal. Then came my social media. I unfollowed a lot of things in my native language and started following English creators. My Instagram feed became an English lesson. My TikTok was filled with short, funny videos in English. I even started reading comments, real people talking, joking, arguing, expressing themselves in everyday English. It was like learning a secret code. All of this, every little change made me feel closer to the language. I wasn't just watching from the outside. I was inside it now. And the more I fell in love with English, the more it gave back to me. My mind started changing too. I began to think in English sometimes, just small thoughts like, "I'm hungry," or "I love this song." Nothing big, but it was a shift, a beautiful one. It meant my brain wasn't waiting for permission anymore. English wasn't just something I learned. It was becoming a part of who I was. There were challenges too, of course. Days when I didn't feel motivated. Times I didn't understand something and felt stupid. Moments where I asked myself, why am I even doing this? But every time I heard someone speak fluently, effortlessly, joyfully, I remembered. I was doing this because I loved it, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. And honestly, that's the biggest secret of all. When you love something, you don't need to force yourself to stay consistent. When you love something, you want to come back to it every day. English became my comfort zone, my escape, my dream. It was no longer something separate from me. It was something inside me. And that love, that deep connection, became the foundation for everything else. Because once I fell in love with English, I wanted to be around it more. I wanted it to be part of my mornings, my nights, my routines. I wanted it in my ears when I was walking, in my eyes when I was scrolling, in my thoughts when I was cooking, and that's when something even bigger began to grow inside me. It wasn't just about loving the language anymore. It was about living with it, every day, in every moment. And so, without even realizing it, I moved to the next step of my journey. After falling in love with the English language, something inside me changed. I no longer saw English as just a dream or a faraway goal. I saw it as something real, something I could actually touch, feel, and grow with. But love alone wasn't enough. Just like in any relationship, love needs action. So I asked myself, how can I stay connected to English every single day? even when I'm busy, tired, or unmotivated? The answer was simple but powerful. Practice one small thing every day. It sounds too easy, right? But trust me, this one idea changed everything for me. I didn't try to learn everything at once. I didn't open a 500-page grammar book and stress myself out. I chose one small thing and I did it every single day. That was my rule. I remember the very first small thing I chose, talking to myself in English. It felt strange at first. I stood in front of the mirror, looked into my own eyes, and said something simple like, "Hi, Juliet, how are you today?" My voice sounded awkward, and my pronunciation was not great. But I smiled, because for the first time, I wasn't waiting for a perfect moment or a perfect sentence. I was doing it. The next day, I added a little more. "Hi, Juliet. How are you today? I feel tired, but I want to learn English. I'll watch a short video later." That was it. Just a few sentences. But they were mine. Not from a textbook. Not copied from an app. Mine. And that's the beauty of small daily practice. It gives you ownership. It builds confidence. 1 day, you say a word. The next day, you say a phrase. And soon, without even noticing, you're speaking whole thoughts in English. I created a little routine for myself. I called it my English 5-minute habit. Each day, I did something small, just for 5 minutes. No pressure, no guilt, just consistency. Sometimes I wrote a few lines in my journal. Sometimes I described the weather out loud. Sometimes I repeated lines from a movie or mimicked the way a YouTuber spoke. 5 minutes may sound like nothing, but when done every single day, it's everything. There were days when I was busy with school or work. But still, I told myself, one small thing, Juliet. Just one thing. So I'd take a deep breath and maybe say 5 words in English before bed. I'm tired. It's been a long day. That counted. And I celebrated it. Because I showed up, and showing up matters. Remember one day I was walking to the market, and I looked around and started naming everything I saw in English. Tree, road, woman, bicycle, red shirt. It turned into a little game. I didn't even realize it, but I was training my brain to think in English in real life. No classroom, no teacher, just me, a sidewalk, and some words. Some days I recorded myself speaking. At first, I hated hearing my own voice. It sounded weird. I made mistakes. I stuttered. But I kept those recordings. And months later, when I listened to them again, I was amazed. I sounded better, more confident, more natural. And it made me emotional because I could hear my own growth. One of the most important lessons I learned during this phase was that progress is invisible at first. You don't feel fluent after 1 week. You don't feel confident after 1 video. But if you keep doing one small thing every day, one day, you wake up fluent. It sneaks up on you. It's like planting seeds in a garden. You don't see the flowers right away, but that doesn't mean they're not growing. I also made small changes to my environment. I put sticky notes around my room with simple English words. Mirror, light switch, window, chair. Every time I touched something, I'd say the word out loud. It felt silly at first, but it worked. My brain started connecting the language to my life. I changed my passwords to short English phrases like, I love English, or keep going 123. Every time I typed them, I felt a little stronger, a little more connected. I made English part of my habits. part of my world. And slowly, English became part of me. I kept a small notebook, too. Nothing fancy. Just a little space where I wrote down things I liked, quotes I heard, new words I found, phrases I wanted to remember. Sometimes I'd write down something like, "I'm not perfect, but I'm learning." It's okay to make mistakes. Every word I learn brings me closer to fluency. And whenever I felt tired or frustrated, I'd read those lines. I'd remind myself, I don't need to know everything. I just need to do one small thing today. That's it. This habit also helped me fight one of the biggest enemies of language learning, perfectionism. In the past, I was afraid to speak because I didn't want to make mistakes. I thought people would laugh or judge me. But practicing one small thing daily helped me let go of that fear. I stopped chasing perfection. I started chasing progress. Little by little, English became less scary. I began to trust myself more. I wasn't fluent yet, but I was fearless. I knew I was moving forward. I knew that each tiny step mattered. Another thing that helped me during this time was focusing on topics I loved. I didn't force myself to read boring articles or memorize word lists. I watched cooking videos in English because I loved food. I listened to fashion podcasts because I liked style. I followed travel blogs because I dreamed of seeing the world. English wasn't something I added to my life. It was my life. And this made practice feel easy. Because I wasn't just learning English, I was learning through English. That's the difference. When you learn a language through things you care about, it sticks. It becomes a joy, not a job. Sometimes I'd write short stories in English. Nothing fancy. Just little scenes from my imagination. A girl walking through a rainy city. A traveler meeting a stranger in a cafe. These stories weren't perfect, but they were mine, and they made me fall deeper in love with the language. Every time. Then, one day, something unexpected happened. I was walking in the park, and a tourist stopped me to ask for directions. He said, "Excuse me, do you know how to get to the bus station?" Without thinking, I replied, "Yes, just go straight and then turn right. It's near the supermarket." After he thanked me and walked away, I stood there frozen. Not because I was scared, but because I was shocked. I had just spoken in English, clearly, confidently, and without translating in my head. That's the moment I knew. My small daily practice had worked. I didn't need big study sessions. I didn't need expensive courses. I just needed to show up every day and do one small thing. That one response to the tourist wasn't just a sentence. It was proof. Proof that my English was real and that I was ready for more. So I asked myself, what's the next level? I wanted English to be more than a practice. I wanted it to be part of my daily rhythm, like brushing my teeth or eating lunch. I wanted it to be as normal as breathing. And that's when I moved into the next stage of my journey. The day I gave directions to a tourist without even thinking, something shifted deep inside me. It wasn't just about that one moment. It was about everything I had done to reach that point. The love I had developed for the English language, the daily small practices, the sticky notes, the music, the mirror talk. It had all come together like puzzle pieces forming a clear picture. But I wasn't satisfied. I wanted more. Not in a greedy way, but in a curious, excited way. I knew now that fluency wasn't something you chase in books. It's something you build in your real life. So I asked myself a question that became the next chapter of my journey. What if my life itself became my English classroom? That's where everything changed. I looked around me. really looked. My home, my routine, my phone, my free time, these weren't distractions. These were opportunities. I didn't need to go anywhere special to learn English. I just needed to change how I lived in my own space. The first thing I did was change my environment. Not physically, but linguistically. I went through my apartment with a stack of sticky notes and labeled everything in English. Fridge, mirror, table, lamp, window, door, toothpaste. Every object had a name, and I saw those names every single day. It sounds like a small thing, but the effect was massive. I stopped seeing those words as vocabulary. I started seeing them as parts of my life. Next, I made a decision that felt bold at the time. I changed the language on my phone to English. Suddenly, every setting, every button, every notification was in English. At first, it was confusing. I got lost in my own apps. I had to guess what some buttons meant. But I kept going. And within a week or two, it became normal. Words like settings, airplane mode, battery saver, and notifications became part of my everyday vocabulary. Not because I studied them, but because I used them. Then came my daily habits. I started doing things I was already doing, but in English. When I brushed my teeth in the morning, I'd describe my day out loud in English. Today is Tuesday. I have to go to work. I want to finish my project. After work, I'll cook dinner. When I cooked, I'd narrate the steps to myself in English. Now I cut the tomatoes. Then I add oil to the pan. The rice is almost ready. When I did laundry, I'd say, "The clothes are clean. Time to hang them outside." No one heard me. No one corrected me. It was just me and my daily life, in English. I also changed my shopping routine. When I went to the grocery store, I made my shopping list in English: milk, eggs, spinach, shampoo, rice. I'd walk through the store and try to think of all the English names for the items I saw. It turned every trip into a mini English lesson. Even cleaning became a language experience. I'd say things like, "I'm cleaning the floor now," or "This room is messy," or "I need to vacuum later." The words weren't academic, they were real. And because they were connected to my physical actions, they stuck in my mind more deeply. And then, there was music. I didn't just listen to songs in English anymore. I sang them. I printed lyrics, underlined words I didn't understand, and looked them up. Then I'd sing along, even if I got the words wrong. It was fun, like karaoke with meaning. Music helped me learn pronunciation, rhythm, and even slang. I still remember the first time I confidently sang an entire Ed Sheeran song without stopping. I felt unstoppable. TV and movies also became more than entertainment. I made rules for myself. If I watched something in English, I'd turn on English subtitles instead of my native language. That way, I could connect the sound with the spelling and catch every nuance. Sometimes I'd watch a short scene 2 or 3 times, first with subtitles, then without. I'd even repeat the lines, trying to copy the accent and emotion. One day, while watching a sitcom, I realized I was laughing before reading the subtitles. That moment was powerful. It meant I wasn't just decoding English anymore. I was feeling it. I also changed how I interacted with people online. I joined English-speaking groups on Facebook and Reddit where people discussed things I cared about: books, travel, food, mindset. I didn't post much at first. I just read comments. But even reading taught me so much. I saw how people used real English in real situations. Not textbook phrases. Real living language. Eventually, I started writing short comments too. It was scary but exciting. I'd write something like, "I love this idea," or "Thanks for sharing," or "This reminds me of something I experienced." Every time someone liked or replied to my comment, I felt a little more confident. And do you know what the best part was? No one corrected me. No one laughed. Because the internet is full of people learning, just like me. It felt like I belonged. Even my playlists changed. I started creating folders like English listening, relax and learn, and podcast practice. Every morning while making breakfast, I'd play a 5-minute English podcast. Not always educational, sometimes just a casual story or conversation between friends. I wasn't trying to understand everything. I was just letting English be present in my space. I also started writing a daily journal in English. At first, it was hard. I didn't know how to express everything I felt, but I kept it simple. Today, I felt tired. I didn't want to study, but I listened to a podcast. It was about travel. I learned new words like journey and explore. I like those words. Sometimes my entries were just a few lines. Sometimes I wrote full pages. But writing helped me see my own language. It slowed my thoughts down so I could process them. It made me more aware of what I didn't know and more proud of what I did bit by bit. All of these actions changed how my brain worked. I stopped thinking of English as a foreign language. It became the language of my home, my thoughts, my emotions. Even my dreams began to change. I remember one night I woke up and realized I had dreamed in English. The words weren't perfect, but they were mine. That's when I truly understood. This language lives in me now. Sometimes people ask me how I became fluent without living in an English-speaking country. My answer is simple. I brought English into my world instead. I didn't have to fly to London or New York. I just had to build a version of London or New York inside my daily life. In my phone, in my routine, in my voice, in my mind. And I want to say this clearly. You can do the same. Your room can be your classroom. Your kitchen can be your speaking practice. Your favorite music can be your listening lesson. Your journal can be your writing teacher. The world is already full of English. You just have to invite it in. Once I started living this way, I noticed something incredible. My brain became faster. I didn't have to pause and translate anymore. I didn't have to plan every sentence. Words came naturally because I had trained my brain to live in English, not just learn it. And it wasn't about big things. It was about small, honest, daily choices. That's what fluency is. Not a destination, but a habit. But even with all these changes, I knew there was still one more step because living in English was powerful, but there was something even more powerful. Thinking in English.